Welcome, restless souls, to Carman's Crypt. I'm Carman, keeper of forgotten tales and curator of nightmares. You've wandered into my domain, where each week I unearth a fresh horror from the depths of human imagination. In these darkened halls, stories wait like hungry shadows. Each tale we've collected whispers of terrors both ancient and new. From crumbling mansions where something skitters behind the walls, to that strange text message you received at 3 a.m. from a number that shouldn't exist. So gather close, the candles are lit, the shadows grow long, and the witching hour is upon us. Are you prepared to face what lurks in the darkest recesses of Carman's Crypt? Lock your doors, still your nerves, and remember, here, every fear comes to life. This is Carman's Crypt. Your sanctuary of scares awaits. It started at the northern edge of the clearing, maybe 100 yards from his tent. Massive, easily the largest tree in the area. Its trunk thick enough that 3 men couldn't have linked arms around it. The bark was deeply furrowed, almost black in the fading light, and its branches spread outward in a shape that seemed somehow wrong. Not diseased, exactly, just asymmetrical, reaching. Charlie studied it, trying to figure out what bothered him. Trees didn't bother people. They were just trees. But something about this one made him uneasy. He dug into his pack and found the can of orange spray paint he carried for marking trails, a habit from his search and rescue days. He walked over to the big pine and sprayed a bright circle on its trunk, about chest high. There, now he'd be able to find it again. The act of marking it made him feel better somehow, more in control. Morning arrived cold and clear. Charlie emerged from his tent stiff and unrested. He had dreamed of something he couldn't quite remember, something about roots growing through the floor of his childhood home, reaching for his bed. He started his camp stove for coffee and surveyed the clearing. The big pine tree caught his eye immediately. It was closer. Charlie blinked, certain he was still half asleep. Yesterday it had been at the edge of the clearing, 100 yards away. Now it stood maybe 70 yards from his tent. He could see the orange spray paint circle on its trunk, bright against the dark bark. That's not possible, he said out loud. He walked toward the tree, counting his steps. 68 paces to its trunk. But had he actually counted yesterday? Had he measured the distance? Or just estimated it? Charlie circled the tree slowly, examining its base. The ground looked normal. Undisturbed dirt, scattered pine needles, no furrows where roots might have dragged. He must have been wrong about the distance. Easy to misjudge scale in unfamiliar terrain. "You're losing it, Webb," he muttered. He returned to his camp and deliberately did not look at the tree for the rest of the morning. Charlie spent the day exploring the ridge to the west. By late afternoon, he had found a stunning overlook where he could see 3 separate mountain ranges fading into blue distance. He sat there for an hour, thinking about Sarah and the accident, and whether he wanted to go back at all. Dark thoughts, the kind his therapist warned him about. He pushed them away and started back toward camp. The clearing looked peaceful in the golden evening light. His tent stood where he'd left it. His bear bag hung undisturbed. And the tree was closer. Charlie stopped at the edge of the meadow. The big pine now stood perhaps 50 yards from his tent, close enough that its shadow would reach his campsite. He hadn't miscounted this morning. He knew he hadn't. He walked from his tent to the tree, counting carefully. 43 paces, 25 fewer than this morning. The tree had moved nearly 30 yards while he was gone. That wasn't possible. Trees didn't move, but the orange circle was right there. The same tree, the same mark. Closer. Charlie pressed his palm against the trunk. It felt like any other tree. Rough, cool, slightly damp. "What are you?" he whispered. The tree didn't answer. Charlie made dinner mechanically, his mind churning through explanations. Hallucination? Optical illusion? A second tree with someone copying his mark? None of it made sense. All of it made more sense than a tree that could move. He decided to stay awake and watch. He sat facing the tree, his back against a boulder. Hours passed. The fire burned low. Charlie's eyes grew heavy, his head nodding forward before jerking up again. At some point, he couldn't say exactly when, he fell asleep. In the dream, he was lying in his tent, listening to the night. The creek murmured, the wind sighed, and beneath those sounds, something else. A deep grinding noise, like stone scraping against stone, like something massive dragging itself across the earth. He tried to open his eyes, but they wouldn't open. Tried to move, but his body was frozen. The sound grew louder, closer. He could feel the ground vibrating, could hear the snap and crack of roots pulling free from soil. Something was right outside. Charlie woke with a gasp. Dawn light filtered through the trees. Everything was peaceful, except the tree was standing beside his tent. Charlie sat frozen, staring at the massive pine that now loomed over his campsite. Its lowest branches brushed against the tent fabric, needles scratching softly in the morning breeze. The orange circle was still there, maybe 10 feet off the ground now. He had sprayed it at chest height, but the trunk seemed thicker here, as if the tree had compressed somehow, pulled itself inward for the journey. He could see the trail it had left, a shallow furrow in the meadow grass, running from the clearing's edge to his tent, and beside the furrow, the torn remains of roots, pale tendrils ripped from the earth, some still twitching faintly. Slowly, Charlie stood. He circled wide around the tree, never taking his eyes off its trunk. Something was dripping from its bark, too dark, not amber or gold, but a deep reddish brown, almost black. It oozed from cracks in the bark, pooling at the base in a sticky puddle. And the smell. Charlie had spent 3 years doing search and rescue. He had found bodies. He knew what blood smelled like. This smelled like blood. Not exactly, though. There was something else mixed with it, something vegetal and old, but the base note was unmistakable. Whatever was dripping from this tree, it wasn't sap. He needed to leave, but his tent was right there. His food, his water filter, his emergency beacon, all of it trapped beneath that dark canopy. He had to get them. Charlie approached slowly, watching the tree. It stood motionless, its branches swaying gently. He reached for the tent zipper. A drop of sap landed on his hand. It was warm, body temperature, and where it touched his skin, it burned. Not badly, but enough to make him gasp. He looked up. The branch directly above him had bent, not swayed, bent, deliberately, angling itself to drip more of that dark substance onto the spot where he stood. Charlie threw himself backward, rolling across the grass as another drop splattered against the ground where he had been. He scrambled to his feet and ran, not toward the tent, just away. He stopped at the creek's edge and turned to look back. The tree hadn't moved. It stood exactly where it had been, its branches once again still, waiting. Charlie understood then what he was dealing with. Not a haunted tree, not a supernatural phenomenon. A predator, something that had evolved to look like a tree, to blend in with the forest, patient and still, until prey wandered close enough to catch. It moved when he wasn't watching, crept closer in the darkness, positioned itself, and waited. The sap wasn't sap. It was digestive fluid, or venom, or something worse. And now it had his tent, his food, his beacon. It had him. Charlie spent the day at the far end of the clearing. He couldn't go into the forest, not knowing what might be hiding among the ordinary pines. How many trees had he passed on his 11-day hike? Thousands? How many had watched him go by, calculating whether he was worth pursuit? 4 hours until sunset. 4 hours to come up with a plan. He could try to retrieve his gear, but the tree would aim that burning sap. He could try burning it, but a fire that size would consume the whole clearing. He could run, but the trail wound through dense forest for 30 miles. Any of those trees could be like this one. All of them could be. As the sun touched the western ridge, Charlie made his decision. He would stay in the clearing. Open ground. No cover for other trees to hide. He would stay awake all night, and at first light, he would run toward the ridge. Less tree cover that way. More open rock. He gathered rocks from the creek bed. He didn't know if they would hurt the tree, but having something to throw made him feel less helpless. Night fell. The darkness was absolute. No moon, just stars, cold and distant. Charlie strained his eyes, trying to keep the tree's silhouette in focus. For a while, nothing happened. Then Charlie heard it, a sound like nothing he had ever heard before, deep and grinding, like tectonic plates shifting, like bones breaking in slow motion, wood scraping against dirt. The tree was moving. Charlie couldn't see it, but he could hear it. The wet sucking sound of roots pulling free from soil. The crack and snap of wood flexing in ways wood was never meant to flex. The slow, deliberate drag of something enormous hauling itself across the ground. Coming closer. He scrambled to his feet, rocks clutched in his hands. He wanted to run, but where? Into the dark forest? He threw a rock toward the sound. It struck something solid. The grinding stopped. Then it resumed. Faster now. The tree had located him by sound. Charlie backed toward the creek. If he could get across. His foot slipped. He went down hard, his bad knee buckling, pain exploding up his leg. The rock spilled from his hands, and something brushed against his outstretched hand. A branch, rough bark, needles that pricked his palms like tiny knives. The tree was right there, silent now, no longer needing to move, because it had already arrived. Charlie felt warmth drip onto his arm. The smell of blood filled his nostrils. He screamed. The search party found the clearing 3 weeks later. Charlie Webb had been reported overdue when he failed to check in at the ranger station. By the time the helicopter spotted the bright blue tent, hopes of finding him alive had faded. The team found the campsite undisturbed, tent intact, gear neatly organized, bear bags still hanging, food untouched. No sign of Charlie Webb. They searched for 2 days. No tracks leading away. No clothing snagged on branches. No evidence of an animal attack or a fall. Just an empty clearing, peaceful and still, surrounded by ancient pines. One of the searchers, a young woman named Ellie, noticed something strange about one of the trees. A large pine standing near the creek, its trunk marked with a circle of orange spray paint. "That's odd," she said. "Why would he mark a tree way over there?" Ellie walked toward the tree, studying the ground. The grass was torn up in patches. The soil was stained dark with a substance that had dried to a sticky residue. She knelt and touched the stain. It flaked under her fingers, dark and brittle. "Hey!" she called out. "There's something weird over here." A drop of sap landed on her shoulder. She looked up. Dark fluid wept from cracks in the bark, pooling in the furrows before dripping slowly downward. It smelled like copper, like something sweet gone bad. She stepped back. Something felt wrong, deeply, instinctively wrong. "Yeah," she said. "I'm fine, let's keep looking." She walked back toward the campsite, trying to shake the feeling that the tree was watching her go. Behind her, a branch creaked softly in a wind that wasn't blowing. The search was called off 2 days later. Charlie Webb was officially listed as missing, presumed dead. His gear was returned to his sister, who cried when she read his journal. Finally found a good spot, the kind of place that makes you feel small. There's a big pine at the edge of the meadow. Marked it with orange paint so I can find it again. Something about it feels important, though I can't say why. Tomorrow I'll explore the ridges. Tonight I'll just sit and watch the trees. The case file was closed. The clearing was left to the wilderness. And deep in the Cascade backcountry, in a meadow that appears on no maps, a large pine tree stands at the water's edge, its trunk marked with a fading orange circle. It waits. It has learned patience. And when the next hiker comes, when someone pitches a tent in the perfect clearing, lulled by the sound of the creek and the beauty of the mountains, it will begin to move again, slowly, silently, closer. And so, dear listeners, we emerge from another dark corner of Carman's crypt. But remember, the horrors you've heard tonight are merely echoes of the terrors that await in the shadows of your mind. If you enjoyed your stay in the crypt, why not invite a friend to join us next week? After all, fear is best when shared. Leave a review if you dare, or share your own tales of terror on my social media, or on my website, carman-carrion.com. Who knows? Your nightmares might just become my next story. Until next time, keep checking under your bed. And remember, in Carman's crypt, every fear comes to life, and no one is truly safe. Sweet dreams, if you can still sleep at all.